So this video aims to help you learn a really critical skill, not only for your BTEC assignments, but also any of you looking to go on to university. You will be absolutely expected to be able to do this referencing skill. So let's have a look. The Harvard referencing system is generally the method of acknowledging people's work that you'll be expected to use. It's probably the most common. There are other versions of how you would reference work, but Harvard referencing is probably the most common. And what we do is we need to evidence any sources of information that you've used in your work. And we do that in two ways. Firstly, we would cite it or cite the author of the work you're using in the actual text. You might give a quote, you might just include one of their ideas or some sort of things that they've said. And you also have to present or reference them and their work in a reference list at the end of your document. So you might be working in your text, or certainly you'll be creating a reference list at the end of your document. So let's have a look at some examples of citing references or citing other people's work that you might have in the text while you're writing. So if the author's name is James Robert Jones, you would only use their surname and the date that their research was done in when you cite this author. You don't put their whole name, you don't put initials, you don't put their middle name, you just use the surname and the date. That's the sort of most basic version. And in this example here, we can say the yellow is basically the sentence that we're linking to this author's work. So there is some evidence that these figures are incorrect. And what we've done is we've inserted this author's name and date inside brackets and with a comma between them to basically acknowledge that we're saying this wasn't my statement, this is their thought. So we're appreciating their input, we're not claiming it as our own, and that's really important. Another thing then, if the author's name is part of the statement, you only put the year in brackets. So the sentence is, Jones has provided evidence that these figures are incorrect. The author is now part of the sentence, and we've only got the year in brackets. If you've got two authors, then you have to acknowledge both of those authors. So it's claimed that government in this information age will work better and cost less. And Bellamy and Taylor did this research. Notice now actually we've got a page reference here. Now because this is a direct quote, work better and cost less, you are supposed to acknowledge the page where you quoted this from their work. So no, if you're giving a direct quotation, then you need to include the page number. Okay, if we'd just paraphrased this and hadn't used speech marks, we wouldn't have to put that page reference in there. Finally here, if there are more than two authors, you cite only the first followed by et al, which pretty much means and the others and the other people. Because if you had 6 researchers or 8 researchers, you wouldn't want to list those every single time you cited them. For example, adoptive parents were coping better with the physical demands of parenthood and found family life more enjoyable. Bracket. Levy et al. They were one of the researchers. The others we can look up in the reference list. And again, we've got to the year. There should be a comma in there actually, but we've got the year there. So note, up to 3 authors' names can be given in your reference list bibliography. So that was how to cite authors inside the text whilst you're writing. And what we need to also do then is create a reference list and put this at the end of the document, basically giving a lot more detail as to where we would find those authors' work. If we wanted to look it up, I might read a particular report and think, wow, that's really critical to something else I'm looking at. Can I find out more about it? And the reference list will give me exactly the detail I need for that. So the reference list is a bit confusing. If we can use Word, which I'll show you later, it becomes a bit simpler. But you basically have the title, reference list, and then you list beneath it in alphabetical order all the authors and the sources of research that you've used in your work. And this is what it might look like. So you notice that it's alphabetically ordered. There is a certain order for things. So the author, the initial, the year, the title, the edition, the source. So this was an ebook. You might have a textbook. You might have a website. So here's a website or a journal. There are different versions of how you write it depending on what you do, but hopefully again Word can do all that and basically produce this for you. You've just got to input it once. We'll show you that a bit later. So this is a reference list that you'd find at the end of your work, and it should be formatted in this way. So just in case you haven't kind of got a sense of it, why would we have to do references? Why do we have to do these things? Well, as I just suggested, it enables any reader of my work to know what sources I used and to be able to find those sources. If you cite powerful bits of research, it gives your argument more credibility and more power. So if you cite something from Wikipedia, that's not a particularly credible source. If I cite something from a sport and exercise science journal, it gives me much more credibility. So it can be quite powerful in you making your research powerful. It can show the scope and breadth of your research. So if you've looked at a whole load of sources rather than just one textbook, again, it shows that you're very well read and again gives your research power. And finally, you are there to acknowledge the source of an argument or idea. You can't claim what they say or what they suggest as yours. That is plagiarism, and that is frowned upon at any level, whether it's college or university. It will get you in big trouble if you plagiarize and basically copy somebody else's work without citing and acknowledging them. So, plagiarism. You will undoubtedly know about this, but it's the significant use by a student or of other people's work and the submission of it as though it were their own. So basically you include something that you haven't acknowledged was somebody else's and you're claiming it as yours, and that is plagiarism, and that will basically get you in big trouble. What you can do is paraphrase work. So once you've read somebody else's work, you can rephrase it slightly. You still have to cite it. Just because you rephrase it and put it into your words doesn't mean it's your thoughts. You still have to cite it like we mentioned in one of the earlier slides. So maybe their surname and the year. And you can also similarly summarize work. So read an article, summarize it in a couple of sentences. Again, you should acknowledge the author and cite their name and the year. If you're doing direct quotes, it could be that the acknowledgement goes inside a sentence. So what you could perhaps do is pause the video, read this paragraph a bit more closely. Here's a direct quote, but the citation has come inside the sentence. It could be that you start the sentence before the direct quote with the citation. So this is where the citation is at the start. Again, stop and have a read. It could be that the citation comes at the end. So the direct quote is this, and we've cited it at the end, inside the sentence, inside the full stop. If you abbreviate a sentence, so you don't want to give, maybe there's a whole paragraph and you've just taken a couple of bits and bobs, you put dots to acknowledge that there actually is other written work there, but you've just extracted the bits that you want, and again you cite. Because they are direct quotes, each of these citations has got a page reference. You will be spoken to in lesson about this anyway, but if you insert a table, a chart, an image from Google, you can't just chuck these in and again claim them as yours. You have to acknowledge them, and we would expect you in the text to write figure 1